It started as a quiet morning on my family's farmland, a sprawling 400-acre property passed down through generations. The sun rose, casting golden hues over the wheat fields, and I was preparing for another busy day. Little did I know this day would mark the beginning of an all-out war with the homeowner association. My name is Jacob Miller. I'm a farmer, and this land is my life. Every acre has a story. Every tree planted by my grandfather tells a tale of resilience. Our farm stood as a testament to hard work until the homeowner association, led by a manipulative woman named Karen Lawson, decided it wanted to rewrite our family's legacy. Karen had been the president of the homeowner association for 3 years, and during that time, she had turned it into her personal fiefdom. Rules were amended at her whim, fines levied without explanation, and neighbors lived in fear of her wrath. I had managed to stay out of her crosshairs until now. The trouble began with a letter. It arrived in an official-looking envelope bearing the Homeowner Association's logo. Inside was a notice stating that our farmland was being rezoned for community development. According to the letter, a park and a recreational area were planned, and the association had secured the land through a legal loophole. The letter also included a demand that I vacate the property within 30 days. Rage boiled inside me. This was my land. My family's blood and sweat were soaked into this soil, and some bureaucratic nonsense was not going to take it away. I decided to confront the homeowner association directly. That same afternoon, I walked into the homeowner association office, clutching the notice. Karen was there, sitting behind her desk, her signature smirk plastered across her face. Beside her was a representative from a local construction company, Apex Builders, who looked just as smug. "Karen," I began, struggling to keep my voice steady. "What is the meaning of this?" She didn't even flinch. "Mr. Miller, the homeowner association has acted within its rights. Your farmland has been under association jurisdiction since the neighborhood expanded. It's all perfectly legal." "Legal? This land has been in my family for generations. You can't just bulldoze it for a park." Karen's smile widened. "It's not personal, Jacob. It's for the community. The residents have spoken, and we need this space for a better future." I turned to the construction representative. "And you? How much are they paying you to destroy a family's livelihood?" He shrugged. "We're just doing our job." The casual dismissal felt like a slap in the face. I stormed out, vowing to fight this every step of the way. Days turned into a week. I sought legal advice, but the lawyer I consulted told me that the homeowner association had indeed found a loophole in local zoning laws. Fighting it would take time and money I didn't have. Then one morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Panicked, I ran outside to see bulldozers tearing into my fields. My heart sank as I watched rows of wheat, nearly ready for harvest, reduced to rubble. Workers in neon vests and hard hats moved with ruthless efficiency. I sprinted toward the machines, waving my arms. "Stop! Stop this right now!" Karen stood nearby, clipboard in hand, overseeing the destruction. She looked at me as if I were an insect beneath her shoe. "Jacob," she said, her tone mockingly sweet, "you're trespassing on what is now homeowner association property. I suggest you step back before I call the sheriff." "This is my land," I shouted. "You have no right." She ignored me, turning her attention back to the clipboard. "Continue with the work," she instructed the crew. I spent the next hours trying to stop the machines, but the workers, backed by Karen's threats, were relentless. By the end of the day, 50 acres of my farmland lay in ruins. I sat on the ground, devastated, as the sun set over the destruction. That evening, I received another blow. A local news station aired a segment about the new community park project, painting it as a triumph for the neighborhood. Karen was interviewed, and she spoke about the sacrifices needed for progress. I decided to call an emergency town meeting. If I couldn't fight the homeowner association alone, maybe the community would rally behind me. The meeting was held in the local community center. To my surprise, dozens of residents showed up. I stood before them, my voice trembling but resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen, many of you know me and my family. We've been part of this community for decades. Today I stand before you not just as a farmer, but as someone whose livelihood is under attack. The homeowner association is trying to steal my land, and if it can happen to me, it can happen to you." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Karen, who was seated in the front row, crossed her arms, her face a mask of indifference. "Karen claims this is for the community," I continued. "But ask yourselves, who benefits? A park we didn't ask for? Or the construction company lining its pockets? Karen stood, interrupting me. Jacob, this is a baseless attack. The community voted for this project, and you're just upset because you're losing your privileged position. I shot back, this isn't about privilege, it's about justice. The room erupted in arguments, neighbors taking sides. Some supported me, while others, intimidated by Karen, remained silent. The meeting ended in chaos, with no resolution in sight. Later that night, as I sat on my porch, exhausted and demoralized, a car pulled up. Out stepped a man I didn't recognize. He introduced himself as Mark Jensen, a former member of the Homeowner Association board. I heard about what's happening, he said, and I think I can help. Mark revealed that he had resigned from the board after uncovering unethical practices. According to him, Karen and the construction company had struck a deal, exchanging favors for profits. He handed me a folder filled with documents, including emails and financial records. This might be the evidence you need to stop them, he said. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. The battle was far from over, but now I had a weapon. The folder Mark Jensen handed me felt heavy, not because of its physical weight, but because of the hope and responsibility it carried. Inside were damning documents, emails, financial transactions, and meeting notes, all pointing to a corrupt alliance between Karen Lawson and Apex Builders. With this evidence, I had a fighting chance to expose the Homeowner Association's malicious intent. The following morning, I reached out to a local investigative journalist, Sarah Whitmore, known for her relentless pursuit of the truth. Over coffee at the local diner, I laid out the story. This could be huge, Sarah said, flipping through the documents. But we'll need more than this to make it stick. Interviews, testimonies, something concrete to tie Karen directly to these decisions. How long will that take? I asked, my patience running thin. As long as it needs, she replied. But if you want to fight back now, I suggest rallying the community. They need to see the truth. That same afternoon, I returned to my farm to find chaos. My irrigation system was in shambles, pipes twisted and broken, as if deliberately sabotaged. Water pooled around the damaged equipment, soaking the dry ground in wasteful streams. Karen's handiwork, no doubt. Furious, I called the sheriff, only to be met with indifference. No evidence ties this to anyone, he said, his voice dripping with apathy. File a report, but don't expect much. Realizing the futility of relying on local law enforcement, I took matters into my own hands. Setting up cameras around the property, I hoped to catch the culprits red-handed next time. The sabotage wasn't the only battle I faced. Word of my resistance spread, and soon Karen's propaganda machine was in full swing. Flyers appeared around town, accusing me of being selfish and holding back progress. On social media, anonymous accounts called me a menace to the community. Some neighbors turned against me, either fooled by Karen's lies or too afraid to stand up to her. Others, however, began quietly offering their support. One such ally was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly widow whose late husband had also clashed with the Homeowner Association years ago. They tried to fine us for planting flowers in our own yard, she said, shaking her head. Karen bullied him until his last days. Don't let her do the same to you. Her words strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for everyone Karen had wronged. With Sarah's help, I organized a public rally in front of the Homeowner Association's office. Flyers, social media posts, and word of mouth spread the news. On the day of the rally, dozens of people gathered, holding signs that read, "Justice for Jacob" and "Stop Homeowner Association Corruption." I stepped up to the makeshift podium, my voice amplified by a borrowed megaphone. This isn't just about my farm, I began, scanning the crowd. This is about standing up to abuse of power. Karen Lawson and the Homeowner Association have overstepped their bounds, and we're here to say no more. The crowd erupted in cheers, their energy invigorating me. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Karen watching from the office window, her face pale but defiant. She disappeared inside, likely plotting her next move. That evening, I received an anonymous tip, a text message from a burner phone number. They're planning to file an injunction against you tomorrow. Be prepared. It was clear Karen wouldn't back down easily. I spent the night reviewing the documents Mark had given me, searching for any overlooked detail that could counter their legal maneuvering. My exhaustion was mounting, but so was my determination. The next day, as expected, I was served papers. Karen and the Homeowner Association claimed I was obstructing community progress and sought a court order to remove me from the property. I knew I couldn't face this battle alone. With Sarah's help, I called on Mark to testify about the internal corruption he'd witnessed during his time on the board. Reluctantly, he agreed, understanding the stakes. As tensions reached a boiling point, another unexpected figure emerged: Daniel Gray, a lawyer with a reputation for taking on powerful organizations. He contacted me after hearing about my plight through Sarah's investigative work. "I believe in your cause," Daniel said during our first meeting, "and I think we can win this, but it won't be easy. Are you ready for a fight?" I nodded. "I've been ready since the day they bulldozed my land." Together, we prepared for the legal battle ahead, assembling evidence, witnesses, and community support. Every step felt like an uphill climb, but the growing solidarity around me gave me strength. The showdown was coming, and I vowed to face it head-on, no matter the cost. The court date loomed over me like a storm cloud. With every passing day, the stakes grew higher. My land, my legacy, and my family's name hung in the balance. Daniel Gray, my new lawyer, was relentless in his preparation. He drilled me on every detail of my case, ensuring I would be ready to face the homeowner association's legal onslaught. The day arrived and the courtroom was packed. Karen Lawson sat confidently at her table, flanked by a team of high-powered lawyers. Apex Builders' representative was there too, his expression smug as he whispered to Karen. On my side, Daniel exuded calm confidence, but my nerves were frayed. The homeowner association's lawyers began their case with a flourish, painting me as an obstructionist who refused to cooperate with community progress. They presented doctored documents, including a supposed vote where the majority of residents had supported the park project. Daniel stood to cross-examine their witnesses, tearing apart their fabricated evidence piece by piece. When Karen took the stand, her demeanor was composed, but Daniel's pointed questions began to chip away at her facade. "Ms. Lawson," Daniel asked, "can you explain why these emails between you and Apex Builders discuss financial kickbacks related to this project?" Karen's face tightened. "Those emails are taken out of context. So you deny discussing personal financial gain from this development?" Daniel pressed. Karen hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Outside the courthouse, the rallying cry of my supporters grew louder. Dozens of neighbors, armed with signs and chants, had gathered to demand justice. Local news outlets picked up the story, painting it as a David versus Goliath battle. Their presence fueled my determination to see this through. During a recess, I stepped outside to thank them. "This fight isn't just for me or Noshun," I said, addressing the crowd. "It's for everyone who's ever been silenced or bullied by those in power. Together, we can make a difference." The cheers that followed reminded me that I wasn't alone. Back in court, Daniel introduced Mark Jensen as our star witness. Mark's testimony was explosive. He detailed how Karen had manipulated board votes and colluded with Apex Builders to push through the park project, all while lining her own pockets. As Mark spoke, Karen's composure began to crack. She leaned over to her lawyers, whispering furiously. Her desperation was visible, and it only made her guilt more apparent. The turning point came when Daniel presented a key piece of evidence, a recording Mark had made during his time on the board. In it, Karen explicitly discussed using legal loopholes to force me off my land. "If Jacob won't sell," her voice sneered through the courtroom speakers, "we'll make it impossible for him to stay." The room erupted in murmurs. Karen's lawyers objected, but the damage was done. That night, as I returned home, I found my barn ablaze. Flames roared into the night sky, consuming years of work in minutes. Firefighters arrived quickly, but the damage was catastrophic. I stood in the ash and rubble, my fist clenched in anger. This wasn't an accident, it was an attack. Karen and her cronies were sending a message: back down or face more destruction. Despite the setback, I refused to give in. I called Sarah Whitmore, the journalist, and invited her to document the aftermath. Her report aired the next day, showing the charred remains of my barn alongside my unwavering resolve. "They can burn my property, but they can't burn the truth," I said to the camera. "This fight isn't over." The trial continued, and with each passing day, Karen's grip on power weakened. Witness after witness testified to her corruption. Yet the biggest shock came from an unlikely source, one of her own allies. During cross-examination, an Apex Builders employee admitted under oath that Karen had personally approved the destruction of my crops and the sabotage of my equipment. The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Karen's lawyers scrambled to contain the fallout. But the damage was irreparable. By the end of the day, even her staunchest supporters began to question her actions. As the trial neared its conclusion, Daniel delivered a closing argument that left no room for doubt. He highlighted the evidence, the testimonies, and the undeniable pattern of abuse. This case isn't just about Jacob Miller's land, Daniel said, his voice ringing through the courtroom. It's about holding those in power accountable. It's about justice for an entire community. When the verdict was announced, the room fell silent. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring the homeowner association's actions illegal and ordering them to cease all activity on my property. Karen's face was a mask of disbelief as she realized her reign of terror was over. Outside the courthouse, my supporters cheered. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief. The battle was over, but the war to rebuild my life had just begun. Winning the court battle felt like a victory, but the aftermath revealed the scars left behind. My farmland was still in ruins, and the barn fire had wiped out valuable equipment. Rebuilding wasn't just a physical challenge, it was emotional and financial. Yet the ruling against Karen Lawson and the Homeowner Association gave me the resolve to push forward. The community was a patchwork of reactions. Many neighbors celebrated the ruling, expressing relief that Karen's reign had ended. Others, however, remained wary, influenced by years of propaganda and intimidation. Some even blamed me for the turmoil, claiming the lawsuit had divided the neighborhood. One evening, during a trip to the local grocery store, I overheard two residents arguing. "Jacob's just trying to protect what's his," one said. "But now we're stuck with legal fees and a canceled park," the other shot back. The words stung, but I reminded myself that change rarely came without resistance. Karen, unsurprisingly, wasn't ready to admit defeat. Despite the court ruling, she used her remaining influence to spread rumors and file an appeal. Her smear campaign painted me as a selfish landowner, blocking progress, and she found a few allies among disgruntled residents and opportunistic developers. One day, Sarah Whitmore called me with alarming news. "Karen's trying to rally support for a new vote," she explained. "If she convinces enough people, the association might try to push this through again." The thought of fighting the same battle twice was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't let my guard down. Determined to end Karen's influence once and for all, Sarah and I worked to uncover the broader network of corruption. Through interviews and public records, we unearthed a pattern of collusion between Karen, Apex builders, and even some local officials. These connections painted a damning picture of greed and exploitation. Our findings culminated in a town hall meeting. Dozens of residents attended, eager to hear the truth. With Sarah's help, I presented the evidence, emails, financial transactions, and testimonies that exposed the extent of Karen's corruption. "This isn't just about my land," I told the crowd. "This is about holding people accountable who think they're above the law." The room buzzed with shock and anger as the revelations sank in. Karen's remaining supporters fell silent, and some even apologized for doubting me. The public backlash was swift and unforgiving. Karen resigned from the Homeowner Association in disgrace, and Apex builders faced investigations into their shady dealings. The appeal she filed was dismissed, leaving the original court ruling intact. For the first time, I felt like the nightmare might finally be over. Yet the damage she'd done lingered. Relationships within the community were strained, and trust in the Homeowner Association had evaporated. Residents called for reforms, and a new board was elected, promising transparency and fairness. With Karen gone, I turned my attention back to my land. Volunteers, neighbors who had seen the truth, offered to help. Together, we repaired the irrigation system, cleared debris, and began the long process of restoring the fields. Mark Jensen, the former board member who had testified against Karen, stopped by one afternoon. "You've done more than just protect your farm," he said. "You've changed this community for the better." Those words stayed with me as I worked tirelessly to rebuild. The scars of this battle wouldn't fade quickly, but they served as a reminder of what perseverance could achieve. Months later, as the sun set over the farm, I stood at the edge of my restored fields. The land was alive again, a testament to resilience and determination. While the fight against Karen and the Homeowner Association had cost me dearly, it had also shown me the strength of a community united against corruption. As I watched the golden hues stretch across the sky, I knew one thing for certain: this land and the legacy it carried would endure. The months following Karen Lawson's downfall were a whirlwind of recovery and transformation. My farmland, once a battlefield of destruction and corruption, was slowly returning to its former glory. Neighbors who had doubted me began offering their help, bringing tools, supplies, and even labor to aid in the restoration. What had started as a solitary fight for justice had grown into a community's collective effort to heal. Despite Karen's resignation and the investigations into Apex builders, some remnants of their schemes still lingered. Legal red tape delayed the full restoration of my property rights, and sporadic threats from anonymous sources reminded me that not everyone had accepted the outcome. One morning, while repairing the fencing along the northern boundary of the farm, I found a drone hovering above. It wasn't the first time. These mechanical intrusions had become a persistent nuisance, clearly an attempt to intimidate me. But instead of anger, I felt resolve. Installing more cameras and securing the property became my next priority. If they wanted a fight, I would be ready. The homeowner association underwent a complete overhaul. With Karen gone, the residents demanded reforms to ensure no single person could wield unchecked power again. A new board was elected, consisting of neighbors who genuinely cared about the community. For the first time in years, the association seemed like a force for good. I was invited to one of their first meetings as a guest speaker. Standing in front of a room filled with familiar faces, I recounted the journey from the moment I received that fateful letter to the courtroom victory that had exposed Karen's corruption. This isn't just about my farm, I said. It's about standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Together, we've proven that no one is above accountability. The applause that followed was more than just encouragement. It was a sign of unity and renewed trust. Just as I began to feel a sense of closure, an unexpected challenge emerged. A corporation, Terra Dynamics, had purchased large tracts of land near the community and announced plans for a massive industrial development. The project threatened not only the farmland's ecosystem, but also the town's way of life. I knew I couldn't sit idly by. Drawing from my recent experiences, I rallied the community once more. Town hall meetings were organized, petitions circulated, and protests planned. This time the fight wasn't just mine, it was everyone's. Sarah Whitmore returned to cover the story, her reporting amplifying our voices. With her help, we uncovered questionable environmental practices by Terra Dynamics, further galvanizing public opposition. The fight was daunting, but the unity within the community made it feel achievable. One day, as I walked through the newly restored fields, Mark Jensen joined me. He had been instrumental in exposing Karen and now stood as a trusted friend. "You've started something bigger than yourself, Jacob," Mark said. "This isn't just about land anymore. It's about protecting a way of life." His words resonated deeply. The battle against Karen had transformed me from a farmer into an advocate, and now I felt the weight of that responsibility. Months of protests, legal battles, and public pressure culminated in a major victory. Terra Dynamics announced they were halting their plans, citing overwhelming community resistance and environmental concerns. The announcement was met with celebration, and for the first time in years, I felt a true sense of peace. As the sun set over my farm that evening, I stood at the edge of the fields, the golden crops swaying gently in the breeze. The battles had been hard fought, but they had strengthened both me and the community. My farm was no longer just a testament to my family's legacy, but a symbol of resilience and unity. I knew challenges would come again, but with the support of my neighbors and the lessons of the past, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. This land, this community, and this story were proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, justice and perseverance could prevail.